We're closing out Week 16 with a real high-powered Monday night matchup. The Colts have been struggling recently, but are still firmly in the AFC playoff race. Similarly, the 49ers are technically the 7th seed in the NFC as of filming this, but they're 4-1 in their division. So we're starting out with Indianapolis's drink of champions, milk. See, most sports champions break out the champagne to celebrate, but at the Indy 500, victorious racers get to sip on a nice cool bottle of milk. Racers actually get to submit what type of milk they want at the end of the race, but funnily enough, the type that started it all is no longer available. The tradition started in 1936 when Lewis Meyer won his 3rd Indy 500 and started sipping on some buttermilk to rehydrate. A dairy industry executive saw that captured on newsreel, insisted that it become a tradition, and it was so. Now, you can't actually have buttermilk anymore. Racers have to choose between whole milk, 2%, or fat-free, but the milk is actually presented to them by 2 Indiana dairy farmers. It's a fun little tradition that helps the race stay connected to the local community. San Francisco's representative has a very strong local connection. Despite featuring a spirit from the southern hemisphere, it's the Pisco Punch. The Pisco Punch dates back to the early days of San Francisco, originating at the Bank Exchange sometime after it was opened in 1853. Both the exact origin and the exact recipe are unknown. The recipe was passed down from owner to owner in secrecy, so it's unclear who the exact originator was and if the spec shifted over time. Now, there's a few core ingredients that are generally accepted as part of a Pisco Punch. You have Pisco, obviously, pineapple juice, lime and or lemon juice, and gum syrup, which is a simple syrup with gum arabic added for a thicker texture. Beyond that core, though, historians and mixologists have largely had to theorize what the secret ingredients could be. Some say it's cloves, others say it's Vin Mariani, which is a red wine that was laced with cocaine. Yet no wonder this drink became so popular. So this is easily the most complicated recipe I've done all season. This should really be an off-season kind of drink, but I just couldn't pass it up. The combo was too tempting. As a result, what we are doing is a clarified Pisco milk punch, aka the Pilk Punch. So we are going to start this all off. This is going to be a batch cocktail. We're going to start it off with 1 cup of whole milk that has been gently warmed up. This will help the milk curdle later on, which I know doesn't sound like a good thing, but trust me, it is crucial for this drink. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this milk to our container right here, and then we're going to set this aside for a little bit. And what we're going to do in a separate container right here, we are going to combine 2 cups of our Pisco. So this is a Peruvian brandy. So this is really the core, alcohol that we've got in this drink. This is our booze. I can get down so I get a good angle on it. Perfect. All right. You can see, used up quite a lot of that bottle, but yeah, this is going to be a big batch cocktail. So we're adding that into our container, sort of temporary holding cell, if you will. Then we're going to add to that 1.5 cups of our pineapple juice. So this is a key part, of the Pisco Punch. So this is 6 ounces, I believe, is each of these. So it's going to be 1.5 of these little cans. What this pineapple juice is going to do is it is going to bring a lot of sort of, sweetness, some tropical notes, and importantly, acidity to this drink, which is going to be key in getting that milk to curdle. Again, I know milk curdling generally isn't a good thing. For this drink, it is going to be a good thing. Oh wait, each of these is actually 6 ounces. So yeah, 2 of them is 12 ounces on the dot. Add that to our Pisco. This bottle might actually not be big enough. We'll see. We'll burn that bridge when we come to it. 1/2 cup of lime juice. Again, additional acidity, key to getting that milk to curdle. Excellent. Also a key ingredient in the original Pisco Punch. And then finally, 1/2 cup of simple syrup. Some additional sweetness to the drink. And again, another ingredient in that Pisco Punch. This is not a gum syrup because we are actually, oh, that's perfect. That is 4 ounces on the dot. We're actually relying on the milk to be our thickener instead of using gum arabic like you would in the Pisco Punch. All right. So now, very importantly, what we are going to do is we are going to pour our cocktail mixture into our milk, not the other way around. All right, this is very important. I don't know why it's very important, but Alton Brown told me it was very important, and I trust that man with my life. So, we're gonna pour our cocktail mixture into our milk, and then we are going to let it curdle for 1 hour, approximately. We'll see. You know, it depends on how quickly it starts curdling. Very carefully. This is where I cross my fingers and hope that I have a big enough bottle. Maybe, please, fingers crossed. Got that pineapple head on it, please disappear. Oh yeah, you can see that is curdling immediately. So we've added all of that acid into this. And the end result, you know, that acid is going to cause that milk to curdle. And now this is disgusting. I'm going to, let me zoom in. Let me do a little close-up right here. Now the science behind what's happening here is quite interesting. There are two main types of protein in milk, casein and whey. Now casein consists of hydrophobic and hydrophilic parts linked by calcium phosphate. Normally, casein bundles itself up into these ball-like structures called micelles, with all the hydrophobic parts hiding on the inside, while the hydrophilic parts help it stay suspended in the water. However, all of the acidity we've just added to the milk via our cocktail is causing that calcium phosphate bond to break, separating the hydrophobic and hydrophilic parts. As a result, all of those hydrophobic casein bits are no longer able to stay suspended in the water, and they separate out into these solid curds, much like an introvert hitting an Irish exit after their extrovert friend disappears into the crowd. In doing so, though, they also bind onto bitter, astringent compounds like polyphenols, which will take an edge off of any rough flavors present in our original mixture. Additionally, the whey proteins are naturally water-soluble, so they'll stay dissolved in our liquid and help lend a velvety mouthfeel to our final Pilk Punch. Okay, so it's been a little bit over an hour, and as you can see, we're starting to get some separation here, where a lot of the curds have fallen to the bottom. You still have this sort of raft of curds at the top. I could wait longer to see if all of these curds would sort of eventually settle, but I'm a little bit impatient, and also, you know, I think we're pretty good on the filtering at this point. So you may understandably be looking at this and thinking, dear God, that is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. There is no way anyone will ever drink that. And that's fair. That is a perfectly reasonable reaction to this horrible monstrosity ahead of us. But that is why we have our second step in this process, which is filtration. So taking a page from Alton Brown's book, the way I'm going to be filtering mine, I have a fine mesh sieve here that is lined with coffee filters. As Dave Arnold states in Liquid Intelligence, this method of gravity filtering, right, where you are running your liquid through a very fine set of filters in order to, you know, let all the clear liquid come through, keep all the solids behind, sucks. It sucks. It's an awful method. It's super slow. However, it's the main method I have available to myself. There are other methods that involve using things like gelatin or agar-agar, agar-agar.
Roger, roger.
To basically filter out the substance, the solids that way. Those are much better methods, but they're also way more involved. They require you getting, you know, gelatin or some other sort of, I forget the technical term, for creating that sort of gel to bind those solids. So we're keeping this low tech. We're gonna run this through this filter. Again, because this method sucks, it's gonna take about an hour to filter through all of our liquid. But once we're done, we are going to pour it into our storage vessel. So we'll do a little cut right now as we pour our wonderful little concoction. You can see that sort of raft of curds. Gotta get that, there we go. So we're gonna strain all of this through our sieve, and then I will come back to you when this is done straining. All right, and now as you can see, it is now tomorrow. Like I said, drip filtering sucks. So what you didn't see is that it basically took, give or take 12 hours to do the initial round of filtration. So I had that, you know, big mesh sieve lined with the coffee filters. That strained out all of our large curds, but there's still a couple small curds that snuck their way through that. So I then did a second filtration into a different container, which got rid of basically all the small curds, and then did a final sort of like just for, confirmation that everything was filtered out, third filtration into our final vessel. And so this right here is our clarified Pisco milk punch. This is our Pilk. It's not quite as cold as I would like it to be. I didn't quite have enough time to get it chilled down after all of that filtration. But regardless, you can see it's, quite clear, but still has that sort of distinctive, light yellow sort of pineapple color to it. So we're gonna pour ourselves a little bit of this. You can pour it into literally, whatever glass you want, because this is our cocktail right here. This is our Pilk Punch. The smell of it, it smells a little bit weird, but I think that is just because like you're smelling the Pisco, which smells, Pisco is a brandy. It's got a bit of a funky smell to it. And so you're smelling sort of that funk combined with the pineapple and a little bit of that sort of like casein from the milk. So it does have a little bit of a weird scent, but I don't think that's a bad scent per se. I think it's just the nature of what we've got in this drink. But yeah, this is our Pilk Punch. Moment of truth, let's try it. Let's go. Ooh. Wow, okay. It does have a sort of creaminess to it. It does have a really nice body. The flavor is quite mild as well. I think, that process of, both the clarification with the milk proteins, but also just the filtration that we ran it through, I think that really stripped out a lot of the harsh notes of this drink. And what we're kind of left with is this like very kind of approachable, it's still got a lot of that funk of the Pisco, but it doesn't have sort of the harshness that just drinking that Pisco straight would have. You definitely, you get some of those tropical notes from the pineapple. And interestingly enough, that sort of mouthfeel that pineapple juice has, where you can sort of feel the enzymes of the pineapple juice, right, attacking your mouth. That's an interesting thing. So pineapple juice isn't super acidic, but the reason it feels so acidic in your mouth is because it has enzymes in it that actually try to break down the proteins of your mouth. So pineapple juice is actually trying to eat you while you're trying to eat it. You still get a little bit of that feeling in that drink. You get that sort of very distinctive, not acidity, but sharpness of the pineapple juice. But it's done a good job at filtering out the harshness of this drink. It is super smooth and approachable. I think this should be a little bit colder. I think, this will be even better when I've let it sit in the fridge overnight. Not even because it's there's off flavors. It's not that there's off flavors that you need to cover up by letting it chill. It's more just that this beverage is just slightly below room temperature. It's right now, I would guess it's probably at your 55, maybe 60 degrees, kind of like a red wine would be served at. And it wants to be served a little bit lower than that, right? This is essentially a batch cocktail at this point. And so you still want to be serving your cocktails cold. It's not like a red wine where you do sort of want to heat it up to that 50-degree mark to really let it open up. It does want to be a bit colder and a bit more closed down. So I think this will be even better, but as is right now, I am very happy with how this turned out, which is a good thing because I put a lot of booze in here and I put a lot of time into this. And so if all of that time and effort was completely wasted, I was going to be fucking pissed. Wow, it's so easy to drink. I think that's probably the most striking thing about it is just how smooth it goes down. There is no, there's the smallest little amount of burn on the sort of initial sip, but it's hard to tell how much of that burn is truly alcohol and how much of it is just the pineapple juice doing that thing that I described. And a little bit of the lime juice, right? We do have a good amount of acidity in there from the lime juice, kind of kicked it up a little bit. But it is just sort of velvety. Velvety is probably the best way to describe the texture. It has a lot of characteristics of Velvet Falernum, actually. It's a little bit less sweet than Velvet Falernum, though. Like, I think the sweetness is really dialed in on this drink. Like, it is not over sweet, but it's not too dry either. It is like right at that perfect level where it just sort of washes over your tongue in a really enjoyable way. But yeah, you can't even really taste like any alcohol in here. This drink does not feel alcoholic, which is kind of terrifying because I think it's like 12%, I want to say. I'd have to put this into my spreadsheet and figure out what the actual alcohol content is of this final drink. But like, it's a batch cocktail, so it's probably, minimum like 10%, likely higher than that. And it does not feel like it at all. This is a dangerous drink right here. I could just you see how quickly I'm going through my glass of it right here, because it's just so good and it just keeps you coming back for more. This is a dangerous little creation I've got right here. Yeah, it's a very simple flavor profile, right? I think like, it's not even like a critique, right? But that is sort of like the main drawback to it, is just like the spec here is not super complex. It's just kind of like your straightforward, pineapple, little bit of acidity from the lime, little bit of funk from the Pisco. But the flavor profile really is kind of like the secondary consideration, which is interesting, right? Normally, when you have a cocktail, the flavor profile of the cocktail is sort of the main attraction, and then things like mouthfeel and presentation are sort of, secondary considerations. You certainly have some cocktails where the presentation is the main consideration and everything else kind of suffers for it. This is very much a drink where the mouthfeel is the main attraction. The fact that it is just so smooth and velvety on the tongue and sort of like creates this little bit of bite, but also a lot of creaminess. It's sort of, it's very similar to like a pineapple ice cream almost in some ways, where, you've got those little bits of pineapple in there that sort of give it some brightness and give it some zing, but the general body of it is very sort of creamy and smooth. That's a similar sort of effect to what we've got going in here. I think I actually have like a container of Haagen-Dazs in the fridge, so I might have to pull that out and try it with this, because I think that'd be a really cool sort of combo and compare and contrast right there. I can't get over how delectably smooth that is. And there is there's nothing milk flavored, I would say, about this drink. Really, maybe if you're super sort of searching for it, you can pick out a little bit of that sort of like creaminess that milk has. But even then, I think that's more just feeling the texture and kind of inferring milk flavors off of that texture. If you're worried about this tasting like, normal milk or spoiled milk, God forbid, do not worry. It does not come through at all. I don't actually know if this drink is safe for those who are lactose intolerant. I don't know if the lactose gets filtered out when we do all of that, curdling and filtering. I think it might, but I'm not confident on that. I also don't know if you used a milk that was lactose intolerant safe, right, that had that filtered out, if it would react in the same way. That's an interesting little science experiment that someone can do. I am not going to do, because this was enough effort as is. But effort that was well worth it. This absolutely paid off. I am super happy with the result, and I got a whole ass bottle of it that I might be taking home for the holidays. I might be, handing this around, getting other people to try it, because, it's just a batch cocktail now. This is basically shelf stable, It'll certainly keep in the fridge for a couple of weeks at the bare minimum. And so, yeah, there's no harm in just letting this sit there, treating it like, a bottle of wine or a thing of beer, just a lovely little cocktail, and the science experiment paid off. What can I say? Well, it was a lot of effort, but absolutely well worth it in the end. We'll see which team's effort is rewarded in the simulation. The Colts start with the ball, and this was simulated before Daniel Jones got injured, but hey, at least the quarterback is still wearing the right number. Regardless, things don't start off well for the Colts, as Tyler Warren catches this short pass and then has the ball knocked loose as he crosses half field. The 49ers recover the fumble with great field position. They can't do anything with it, though, and after trading punts, the 49ers finally put together the first scoring drive of the game as Purdy hits Pearsall over the middle, who takes off and outruns his pursuer for a 30-yard touchdown. San Francisco is back in Colts territory in the second quarter, and Purdy looks to Kittle to convert a 3rd and 5, but Jermaine Pratt lays the boom and breaks it up. As a result, they bring out Eddie Pinheiro for the 47-yarder, and he sends it through the uprights to extend the 49ers' lead to 10. However, with just over a minute left in the half, the Colts finally get on the board as number 17 takes it untouched up the middle for a 5-yard touchdown. 49ers can't put any more points up with their limited time, so they go into the half up 10-7. Both defenses start strong in the third quarter, with the Colts finally breaking the stalemate by getting Jonathan Taylor involved, who has a massive hole to run through for an 8-yard diving touchdown. However, the 49ers open the fourth quarter by retaking the lead on a 9-yard touchdown from Purdy to Pearsall, just barely crossing the goal line. San Francisco doesn't give the Colts an opportunity to get back in the game, as their defense gets a stop, and then their offense burns a lot of clock, grinding the ball down to the 3-yard line, where a pop pass to Tonjes puts them up 2 scores. The Colts toss together a strong drive to the 12-yard line, where Michael Pittman comes up just shy of the end zone with a minute and a half left. However, instead of going for it from the 1-yard line, they instead decide to just kick the chip shot to cut the deficit to 7. With this now a 1-score game, they go for the onside kick, but McAfee ain't here anymore, and the 49ers recover the kick easily. After one first down conversion, the 49ers were able to just kneel out the rest of the clock and lock in their road victory, 24-17. This does feel like the most average outcome possible for this matchup. It really feels like 2 solid, but not incredible offenses going up against 2 strong, but not invincible defenses. I have a feeling both of these teams will really be leaning into their star running backs, but I think this is one of those games that'll go one of 2 ways. It'll either be profoundly mid and average like this game, or it'll be one of those crazy games like the 49ers-Panthers game back in Week 12. There's also the huge X factor of Old Man Rivers playing for the Colts instead of Indiana Jones, which we'll get into right now. So obviously this game was Purdy versus Jones, but it'll be Rivers wearing number 17 since he didn't die in their game against the Seahawks. However, just over 200 yards and no touchdowns is a pretty reasonable baseline to set, so we'll go with that. Purdy had a very clean and efficient game, throwing 3 touchdowns and no interceptions with only 264 passing yards. Okay, I say only 264 like he didn't throw for 3 touchdowns and only 200 yards against the Cardinals early this season. Despite CMC and Jonathan Taylor both being huge parts of these teams' offenses, neither one could really get the run game going. It certainly wasn't due to lack of trying from the 49ers, who gave McCaffrey 18 carries, but those only turned into 68 yards. CMC's actually struggled with his rushing efficiency this year, only averaging 3.6 yards per carry. JT had a healthier 4.4 yards per attempt this game, but he only got 7 carries, though one of those was a touchdown. The biggest switch between Indiana Jones and Old Man Rivers is going to be here in the rushing stats, as I highly doubt we'll even see Rivers crack double digits, much less outrush Jonathan Taylor. Now, as I mentioned, CMC has struggled with his ground efficiency, but he's made up for it through his involvement in the pass game. 7 catches for 84 yards would be crazy inflated for any other running back, but for him, it's merely just above average. Besides him, though, none of the other pass catchers had a particularly impressive day, except maybe Ricky Pearsall, who managed to turn 2 of his 3 catches into touchdowns. Down at the bottom of the stat sheet, we have 2 fun little nuggets. Number 1 is third-string tight end Jake Tonjes catching that little 3-yard touchdown pass. He's actually had 4 touchdowns on the season, but hasn't had one since Kittle has come back to the lineup. Number 2 is our favorite fullback Kyle Juszczyk catching a single 3-yard pass. Love to see him get on the board. Now in the Monte Carlo sim, the Colts don't have Dan Jones, but they also don't have Phillip Rivers. When I ran this sim, the most likely quarterback for Indianapolis was rookie Riley Leonard, but obviously they eventually decided to go in a different direction. Both of our star running backs have much better games in the Monte Carlo sim, though JT has a slight edge in rushing yards, 76-70. Also, George Kittle is the leader in receiving yards for the 49ers, which might be the first time in the series where we've had a tight end lead a team in receiving yards. But hey, if there's any tight end to do it, Kittle is a good bet. The score distribution for this matchup largely lines up with the low-scoring affair that we saw in Madden, as the distribution is incredibly spread out, but generally stays under 25 points for the Colts and below 31 for the 49ers. As you can see, the Monte Carlo sim also tilts slightly in favor of the 49ers, settling on a 20-15 San Francisco victory. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the velvety smooth, funky science experiment that is the Pilk Punch. If you make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.